Today, we'll be talking about coolant pumps. If your pump is making noise or has insufficient flow, there are a number of quick things you can do to make sure it's running correctly. These high-performance impeller pumps are simple, rugged, and flow 30 gallons per minute. Haas uses pumps from several different manufacturers, so they don't all look or sound exactly the same. If you have two different ones, side by side, they may sound different. That doesn't mean one of them has a problem. And remember, these pumps are pushing lots of coolant. Don't expect them to run silently. With that said, let's consider a pump that does seem noisier now than when you first started using it. We'll start off with the easiest stuff. Check your coolant level. If there isn't enough coolant in the tank, or if the coolant isn't flowing out of your machine and back into the tank quickly enough, you may hear the pump cavitating. This is caused by a coolant level that's too low and results in inadequate coolant flow through the pump. Simply adding the correct amount of coolant to your tank fixes this issue. Plan on keeping your coolant level above 3/4 full at all times. If you find it troublesome to keep your coolant tank topped up, you might want to check out our coolant refill option. It takes care of your coolant so you can concentrate on handling business. Check the cooling fan for debris or damage, and make sure it isn't being blocked off. Any of these can cause the pump to run hot and underperform. Next on our list is to remove the pump from the tank and check for chip buildup around the lower intake area. But unplug the pump first. On our standard flood coolant pumps, chip buildup will typically surround the impeller housing. Clean out any chips or other debris you find in this area. On high pressure TSC pumps, clean chips and debris off of the filter screen. Remember that the Haas TSC pump features self-cleaning action to clear the filter screen at recurring intervals. So typically you should only need to check the filter during periodic cleanouts if things have gotten really dirty inside the tank. On the flood coolant pump, rotate the impeller drive shaft by hand. It should turn freely with no grinding or bearing noise. Sometimes a chip can get sucked in and stuck between the impeller and the housing. This typically won't cause damage, but can make quite a scraping noise. If you suspect damage or contamination inside the impeller housing, you can remove the impeller cover to check it out. Mark the cover for orientation, and then with the cover off, check the impeller for damage and clean any debris out of the area. If the impeller is damaged, it needs to be replaced. But that doesn't mean you need to replace the entire pump motor assembly. Haas offers replacement impellers and kits on parts.haascnc.com. With the intake side of things handled, next, check the pump's phasing. We have an entire video dedicated to this subject. The link is in the description of this video. If your pump is rotating but not pumping coolant, it's probably turning in the direction opposite the air on the impeller, because the phasing is incorrect. Now, if your pump sounds fine, but your machine's coolant flow is low, here are some things to look at. Disconnect the coolant hose from the filter housing and run the pump directly into the tank. Get a buddy to help you out. 30 gallons per minute at 30 psi is a lot of coolant. This will tell you if the problem is the pump itself or somewhere else in the coolant system. If the coolant flow is good, the problem is elsewhere. Check your coolant hoses for kinks or twisting. Check the coolant fittings and nozzles for chip contamination. Anywhere there is a fitting is a possible location for chips to collect and impede your coolant flow. Some areas where chips can collect are the nozzles around your coolant ring as well as your P-cooler unit. Make sure these areas aren't plugged up. Sometimes you'll get lucky and these will be easy to find, since you might notice that one nozzle is flowing less coolant than the other ones. To be sure your coolant is getting back to the tank where it belongs, check that chips are being removed properly from the machine enclosure by your auger or conveyor. There are coolant return holes in the bottom of the enclosure that must be clear to allow coolant to flow back to the tank and pump. Take a careful look at the chips in the chip strainer. Are some of the chips finding their way into the tank? If you do find during periodic cleaning that a significant quantity of chips is getting into your tank and you're having trouble repeatedly with chips or other debris contaminating your machine's coolant system, it might be time to consider adding an auxiliary coolant filter to your machine. This is the next step to ensure you're pumping clean coolant. In the end, whether it's just a few simple changes or going as far as adding extra filtration, make sure your coolant pump is getting enough coolant and that the coolant it's getting isn't contaminated. Thanks for watching.